What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today it is the beginning of our next 3-round mock draft with trades. It's going to be split up into 2 different days, just like the NFL draft. Day 1 is round 1, and day 2 is rounds 2 and 3. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. You guys know how to use YouTube. Below my face is my board. It's going to irritate you, and that's okay. The thing I owe you is honesty above all else. You will also see that it's continuously changing. This is a reflection of my actual current grades. So you'll see certain players are moving up, certain players are moving down. But I'm not going to be moving it arbitrarily based on how I think somebody is doing, because I owe you guys honesty, and I can only deliver that through watching them through all 22 tapes. So, if you guys see a name on this list, there's a 95% chance that there's a video on them. If there's not, then feel free to ask me in the comment section below. Below my board is all the great ways to get involved in the community. Easy way to do that, go to the link tree. You're 2 clicks away from getting anywhere you want, and use that UnderDog Fantasy code to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash for free on me. So let's get right into this. Let's have a good time. And this is a live mock draft, so if I do point out something wrong, feel free to point it out. You can be a dick, just don't be a dick about it. That's what I always say. I want to make a mistake once because it makes good content for you and me if I don't make it more than once. Pick number 1 for the Carolina Panthers. Bryce is benched. They say they're not entertaining offers at the moment, but I mean, how many times have we seen the sales tactic where it's like, oh, well, I mean, Trey Sermon's going to be an integral part of our team, then he ends up getting either cut or else traded later on. Like, it's just a sales tactic, in my opinion. You don't bench somebody who, when the rest of the team is doing really well, they're failing, and then you're just basically going to be like, well, he's going to be on our team for the future. It's like, if you really believed in it, you'd work through the kinks, you'd keep him starting, you get experience, because experience is going to trump anything else. Andy Dalton's not going to be delivering any form of legitimate supremacy in the NFL to you. So it's pretty obvious that I think that the time is done. Now, maybe it's not like this season, but they're going to be trading Bryce probably in the offseason at the very minimum for a team that might just want to take a shot on one. Technically, you could talk about the Steelers, but I don't really believe that. But let's just say the Jets want to send a flyer. I mean, they got Jordan Travis, who's not necessarily much better built. So, I mean, hell, if the Jets want to send a 6th-round pick, that might definitely be able to get that done. And you can end up getting somebody who has that mobility that you like, the arm upside that you like. And, there's certainly some factors that you don't like, but at the same time, it's a former number 1 pick. And when Bryce is comfortable, he's been shown to do a really damn good job. So I do think the Carolina Panthers, bottom line, are going to be going after a quarterback. People are saying, hey, trade out of this, get some future capital, and, go after your quarterback in 2026. There's a couple factors here, and I want to mention this about the Giants as well. Not the Giants. Yeah, there's the Giants. I'm tripping balls. But when you are in this position, and if you believe a quarterback actually deserves to be a top 10 selection, you have to pull the trigger. You have to. It's a disservice to your franchise not to, because theoretically, I mean, I've been in this argument plenty of times. Do you go after the quarterback, or do you build the team? I think a lot of these teams have a lot of really solid talent now. There's not many teams that are genuinely riddled with enough holes to where you can really make the alternate argument. In free agency, there's a lot of really good talent that you can get for cheap. Obviously, in the draft, college players are making bigger impacts than ever. Some can argue. But there's also guys like an offensive line, for example, guys like Cooper Beebe, 3rd-round pick. You don't really need to spend the 1st-round pick on something like that. After the 1st round, quarterbacks don't necessarily hit. You could also say that about the 1st. But it's such a valuable position that if you can address it there and then have a really reliable scouting department, you can fill the other areas with really solid value down the board. It's just much harder to do that at quarterback because it is such a widely studied position by all 32. So continuing on that notion, with enough yapping going, we're going to be going after the first quarterback in this draft. Carson Beck had a bit of an off week versus Kentucky. I do think that he is a very solid quarterback, but I also do not see the ceiling on him being worth a number 1 overall pick. That's just me personally. I don't think he's consistent enough in terms of ball placement, and especially struggling versus Kentucky, it's going to be a great week to see how he can bounce back. But I'm looking at someone who could deliver this team in terms of arm talent, in terms of actual playmaking ability, and it's Cam Ward and Miller Moss. I know people aren't going to like that. I know some people will like it, absolutely, but I'm pretty damn aware of the people who don't. There's 2 quarterbacks that I think are deserving of top 10 picks at the moment. And they're going to go through some unique tests this week. So that's what's going to be so fun looking back on this next week. Like Cam Ward's going to face the University of South Florida. You might say, whoop-de-fucking-do. It's South Florida. We're not talking about them going up against Alabama or anything like that. But University of South Florida gave Alabama issues, speaking of. And that's because they have a unique defense that has unique blitz schemes that, I mean, we saw it very recently with Brian Flores when he's doing very unique looks. It's a great way to see how quarterbacks react. And it's going to be a great opportunity for Cam Ward, who he's had his time to shine versus Florida in week 1. But after this, there are no gimme games. So this is going to be a very good week to determine if he is on that upward trajectory. Is he able to not put the ball in harm's way at times where he shouldn't? And that's been his biggest issue. Miller Moss is just very inexperienced. 3 starting games, done well in all of them. But at the same time, 3 starting games, still developing as a processor because he doesn't have all that legitimate experience. You might say that's not worth the number 1 overall pick. He's my QB1 by a good margin. And I know a lot of people, including Broshmo, who I talked to last week, he's like, oh, he's a 3rd rounder at the moment. I mean, I talked to him today. He's like, I'm starting to get really excited for Miller Moss. Like, he's going to be the guy you want to buy in terms of stock. But Cam Ward brings the size, the physicality, the arm talent that is worth a number 1 overall pick. And if his processor improves, which for Bryce, he's not even using his processor as it is. So you still have all the upside with Bryce that Bryce had, but you have better playmaking ability, in my opinion. And he has a lot of experience. The big-time throws are almost irreplicable. You can't really get many quarterbacks that can make the throws that Cam Ward does. Now, here at number 2 with the Denver Broncos, we're in an interesting position because this is a team that needs a left tackle. Because you look at Bowles, going to be gone. And, you could even argue about right tackle, but that's so much money to be invested there. Just address the position that you need, right? And especially when you have guys like Will Campbell on the board, Kelvin Banks, obviously. There's certainly some players, Jack Nelson as well, that I want to throw into that mix. That does look pretty good for round number 2, to be fair. Maybe you can steal a Jack Nelson at the top. But at the same time, it's still worth mentioning in this area. You ended up seeing Will Campbell have his struggles versus South Carolina. I certainly think that, that disqualifies him for being a top 3 selection at the moment. He could easily bounce back and then end up showing that, hey, that was just a fluke game where he just was a little bit off, and that's okay. He hasn't had a reality check since pretty much Dallas Turner ended up straight arming him into the dirt. So for the Denver Broncos, I definitely want to consider making a move here. And you could even argue that a team like the Patriots would be interested in someone like Will Johnson, pairing him up. Pairing Will Johnson up with Christian Gonzalez would be an unbelievable combination. But I do want to actually throw this idea out there. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. For the Colts. The Colts are looking for a boundary corner like nobody's business. I think it's probably one of the key areas that they need to address more than anything on their entire team. And Will Johnson is literally an unbelievable player. I do know that they're a little stiff when it comes to, they're a bit stingy. So I do think that they would be probably the type that would not put a very good price on the table for it. But I do like the idea of them moving up for Will Johnson. However, at the moment, I just don't really see value in making a move back unless it's just to secure with the Giants here. So my only issue with the Giants making a move up here, and most of the time when people say, oh, no one's going to, if the Broncos aren't taking a quarterback, why would the Giants move up? It's because someone else will. The Raiders would definitely like a quarterback, but there's no way you're doing an in-division trade for a quarterback at the top of the first round. You'd have to get a lot of draft capital for that. The Rams could be interested in that, but right now the price is just too high for any other team. I think the Giants are going to remain put. Will Johnson's going to be the selection for the Broncos. You just go after best player available, and pairing Will Johnson up with Pat Surtain feels like the right move. For the Giants, sitting here at number 3, quarterback is on the mind. I wanted to have a situation where Will Johnson fell to 3, where it was just okay, no quarterback is here, and There's just not a needy enough team for quarterback within the top 10 outside of an in-division trade to where I really thought that a team would be going after their quarterback. And I already made the comments about Miller Moss. He's my QB1, actually. I just think Cam Ward might be the more likely first overall selection based on experience. Miller Moss might return to school. There's a good chance of that. But I think that on the trajectory he's going, he is outclassing the rest of the talent in this class. And so Miller Moss is going to be that selection. He brings the athleticism already to the table that you guys are looking for, but he also brings crazy arm upside. People talking about third round arm talent is just, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Sorry. Hate to break it to you. When you're able to throw consistently into the honey hole, which is the gap between the flat defender as well as the deep half defender in cover 2, that requires significant arm strength, arm velocity, as well as placement. And that's exactly where Miller Moss thrives, is picking apart cover 2, which is very hard to do at the college level. So don't try to come at me with some bullshit claim that his arm isn't good enough. Hate to say it, that's just not right. Maybe it's not super duper consistent in terms of some of his throws where he tries to take some off of it, but at the same time, at least you see that there's some ball variation in terms of speed on that. At pick number 4 for the New England Patriots, they're sitting here. I think it's a team that certainly could try to move out, but the question is, who would a team move up for? That's the problem in this draft, is really the teams don't have very much competition in terms of someone who is a must draft. And it keeps the top 10 kind of stagnant for me, or maybe at least the top 5. Because Will Campbell seems like the right selection. He ended up struggling, but he still has unbelievable high-end reps. If he doesn't bounce back, then he is at higher level of scrutiny for him to slide down outside of the top 10. And I think that would be very fair criticism. But this team certainly needs a security blanket at left tackle. I still want Caden Wallace to be right guard or right tackle. Not a fan of him being a 6th offensive lineman or just being the future at left. That's just not my vibe for him. Never thought that's what he would do when he was at Penn State. So with that all said, I think offensive line is still a crucial position to draft. And so Will Campbell is going to be the selection. He has a chance to really screw himself this week, but if he bounces back, it makes my selection of him at 4 just a little bit more solidified. I've talked about this pick at number 5 for the Titans plenty of times at this point. Travis Hunter is the selection, and he's not going to be a corner in the NFL. I wish he were. I think he's I wish he would, but I just don't think he's going to. You look at the money, and it's, again, you're looking at wide receiver 23 making the same as corner 4, right? Like, it's just money talks. And, offense is a little bit more explosive. It's a little bit more fun, and that's okay. I mean, I think Travis Hunter's a better corner than he is receiver, but he fits this role perfectly for Callahan, and that's the Tyler Boyd role that he's had and used a lot throughout his coaching tenure. So I think Travis Hunter's perfect for him. That's his dream fit. No quarterback's worth it at pick 5, and even though I love a couple of the quarterbacks, it's just they're guys who at 15 I can start digesting it. Not here in the top 10. At pick number 6 for the Commanders, it's corner, it's offensive tackle. There's no way that you can kind of point any other way for them. And Kelvin Banks is fantastic. He's done a really, really good job this year, even against Texas or Michigan edges who have talent. Their corner core needs a lot of help. But I do think that there is some good corner depth in this class to where you can digest passing on it because the guy that you'll get will be an upgrade. So we're going to be going Kelvin Banks here, tackle out of Texas. With Brandon Coleman getting a 19 pass blocking grade this week, it's pretty damn far from you getting a legitimate starting tackle on your lineup. At pick number 7 for the Vegas Raiders, the easiest position to draft is going to be quarterback. However, I just don't see the value here at pick 7. That being said, I do see players like Benjamin Morrison here who I think are unbelievably talented. I see guys like Marcus Bowe, absolutely, that should be drafted at least around this range, but Marcus ended up having a little bit of a stinker week versus Notre Dame, and to be fair, his entire team did, but when you allow 4 pressures in the biggest margin loss in your school's history, I'm waiting to watch that in all 22. But looking at the other players that could be enticing for a move up here, I mean, Jalen Walker is a stud. I know that for a fact that the Cardinals will be taking a heavy look into him. The Bears, if they want to go after their edge too, could get a little bit aggressive, try to jump up. But I also see the Jaguars being a team that is willing to go and get the player that they want. And I do think there's a drop off in corner talent after Ben Morrison. Even though I love Davison Igbinison, there's actually, you guys can't see it, there is a noticeable gap between Igbinison and even Jack Kaiser, who I love to death. With all that being said, I do think that this is the prime opportunity for a team like the Raiders to get some extra draft capital. But for the Jaguars, I mean, the Jaguars could be trying to go after offensive line, absolutely. But I mean, the value is going to be there in the second. It's not here in the first. You're reaching at pick 11. So go and send your third round pick to Las Vegas. If you want to toss in something future, feel free to do it. I think the Raiders will be nice and happy getting the earlier third round pick out of this. And I feel like that's honestly relatively fair trade value. So feel free to haggle amongst yourselves, but that's going to be the trade up right there. Sending a third round pick to move up and get the best corner on the board is super crucial. Again, offensive line is not going to be valuable enough. You'd have to trade back to even digest it. You're getting a legitimate difference maker there in Ben Morrison at pick 7. And that jumps the team that I would have definitely taken him to, which is the Indianapolis Colts. Now the Colts are kind of in a sticky situation. Because that was the dream pick. Now you could have said, oh, why didn't the Raiders just trade with the Colts? Maybe get like a 4th round pick out of it. Because I still think the Raiders would be overdrafting the player they were going after. And also, now you don't really have leverage to trade back anymore. You can't really do the double doink. So I think that at pick number 8 for the Colts, there's not really a player that is worth trading up for. People will highlight quite a few guys, including Tetairoa McMillan, Luther Burden for this role, and they're fantastic in their own right. What I've realized by studying, I have a video on 57 wide receivers that I fully broke down. 2 hours, 11 minutes, 11 seconds. Feel free to check it out. And I've updated some of the rankings there. I've even added more receivers. So I have over 60 fully graded at the moment. So by doing that, you just realize how many alternate options there are. And it's why teams that know how to utilize players by, just scheming them open, they can get like similar impact to first round receivers in like the 5th round. Cough, cough, the Rams. And this year, there's a lot of guys like that. So not saying that these guys aren't worth it. I'm just saying if you can trust your organization and some of the teams that I would trust, like the Rams and even the Bears for that matter, like they don't need to do this. But for a team like the Colts, what you need to do is just get a damn good player. So I hate to be rinse, wash, repeat, but Malachi Starks is the best defensive back in the class. I have Nick Emonwari being a little bit above him in terms of being a safety, but at the same time, they are both unbelievable talents in their own right. At pick number 9 for the Los Angeles Rams, really, really good options, pretty much littered everywhere for this team. Offensive line health has been the issue for the Rams. Still don't think. Like I traded up with the Jaguars, not seeing a talent here. I still don't. And right tackle is not the position the Rams are targeting. It's a left tackle. So looking at other positions the Rams could target, edge rusher, they're completed. Running back, they're completed. This is another trade back spot where I think they could end up trying to target another really reliable receiver. But again, it's a team that does a very good job down the board getting players to make a big impact. I do think corner is a position I heavily would suggest for this team, and Tacario Davis is perfect for them. So if I have to take a player, that's a player I am taking. But Mason Graham is here, and I'm seeing a team like the Cardinals that absolutely could use a defensive interior just waiting and lurking. And if I'm the Rams and I'm seeing Mason Graham, who's an elite block shedder, I don't want him going to Arizona. So I might be giving him to another team, maybe even on a discount of a trade up, just so I could feel more comfortable with him not in my own division. And the team I could see getting aggressive here, as they did in this most recent draft, is the Minnesota Vikings. Now, they don't have a ton of draft capital this year, but the Rams could leverage that with Flores being the DC that he is, by being able to have them pretty much solidify their defensive line that way. I don't see any other teams that would be overly desperate to move up. The Chargers, you might want to go LA to LA. I just don't really think that's going to be very likely. Now, you could do the Bears. The Bears going defensive interior. I know offensive interior is super key for the Bears to target right now. But defensive interior of Mason Graham, you could start stacking up some wins right there just based on even better defensive performance. And defensive interior is a position the Bears still need. And it's a good way to flip off the Arizona Cardinals here. My goal is I'm going to be giving it to the Bears on a discount. The Bears are not going to have to trade massively. It was a 3rd round pick to go from 11 to 7. From 12 to 9, I am going to be doing it for a 4th round pick, but like I might end up doing like a 4th in 2026, as well as maybe a 5th here in 2025. Just be able to give the Rams actually what the Rams do best at, which is snipe guys down the board. Again, this is including a 2026 pick. So the Rams move down, the Bears move up, and they select Mason Graham. Defensive interior, still, you pair up him with Gervin Dexter. We didn't end up giving any of our 2nd or 3rd round picks, so we still are able to utilize those and pivot them and use them accordingly. And I think that's going to be super key for our team because you need to build that offensive line. Offensive line has a ton of talent in day number 2 for guys who are really flexible at positions like that. And then you also just get to continue developing the rest of the team while getting a massive impact player that some people think is worth the number 1 overall pick at number 9. At pick number 10 for the Cardinals, just got absolutely shellacked in terms of not being able to go after Mason Graham. I'm going to be going after my number 6 player in the class, and that is Jalen Walker. 6'2", 245 pounds, exactly similar build to what you guys have been drafting with Xavier Thomas, BJ Ojulari. It makes sense. And Jalen Walker's also a partial linebacker as well. And I'm excited in his first experience as a pretty much full-time edge rusher since Mikael Williams was not able to play versus Kentucky. He had 8 pressures, which is absolutely insane for someone who is still so raw. Big fan of his game. I think he's super polished, even though he's very raw at both positions. He's the highest graded player I've ever, he's the highest graded player I've ever had who is considered to be raw. He is awesome. Pick number 11 for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now is okay to take a QB. Now, after gaining that 3rd round pick, I feel pretty comfortable sitting here and taking a quarterback. And I think Carson Beck, even though he didn't have the best week, I still think that he has enough games on his resume to make him pretty much a better version of Gardner Minshew. And you guys are having success with Minshew. Imagine 10% better. Now you don't have to win games by 3 points. Maybe you're consistently able to just hold on to 3-point leads. And I think that's what Becca brings to the table. Now, people want to bring up the Shedeur Sanders factor. I've talked about it ad nauseum, but there are certainly ties because AP and I think Dion have some connection in there. And, it could be a reason why they don't draft quarterback in the 1st or the 2nd. But again, I've had enough to talk about it. I'm not really in the mood to talk about it anymore because people on both sides of the aisle just are not going to meet in the middle. It's not going to be a productive conversation. So as much as I want to talk about ball, people just don't want to actually talk about football. And, people want to start making some claims that are pretty baseless. And at a certain point, no matter how much actual evidence you give people, they're not going to agree with it. And that's okay. We'll see over time as the season goes on and narratives will change. Whether that's good for you, good for me, who cares? As long as the truth comes out. Pick number 12, though, for the Los Angeles Rams. This is where I could start arguing going after an offensive lineman because we traded back, because we got those extra picks. And I might do it. Because Ariante Ursary is getting a ton of hype. And for Jacksonville, I just trust them to develop tackles less. Ursary is going to take a lot of adjustment to be able to get to the NFL as a pass blocker. But also, it is kind of cool to think about Luther Burden in this situation. It's very rare that I have the Rams up this high. Actually, I ended up talking about Tacario Davis. I'm going to rock it. Let's go Tacario Davis at pick number 12. Could have won a quarterback, but I just don't see the value in one at pick 12. And I can trust the Rams to go after solid talent down the board, unless it's Stetson Bennett. But Tacario Davis is maybe not the most athletic corner on planet Earth, but if there's a team I trust at maximizing their defensive back talent, even if they're not the most athletic, it is probably the Los Angeles Rams. At pick 13 for the Cleveland Browns, they're going to be losing Amari Cooper as well as Elijah Moore in the offseason. Luther Burden could be right up your alley, or it could be T-Mac. The question is, which one would you like? I see more similar style to Luther Burden down the board and less like T-Mac, even though I used T-Mac as the example earlier. Would have thought about Genty, but again, this class is super duper deep at running back, and I'd prefer to go after the position that is going to be very vacant, over one that there are still guys who can make an impact that you can sign. At pick 14 for the Vikings, Ashton Genty is a very intriguing target at this point. Actually, Vikings fans, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that because I do think that could be a super, super high impact addition there. But Minnesota Vikings, Denzel Burke's here. He's super, like, there's nothing wrong with Denzel Burke, Mr. Reliable, and he also is very physical. Now, I think Davison Igbinison is a perfect fit for your defense as well. And I don't think he's going to be drafted nearly as highly as I have him, but maybe not even in the 4th round. I don't know if he's going to be drafted there. I still will probably take him here in this mock draft, but at the same time, I do think that Iggy just gets overlooked a lot because he's very, very physical. That's perfect for Flores. But Denzel Burke does a great job as well, and he is uber reliable. Like, this guy doesn't do anything wrong. You're getting yourself a legitimate every down starter that's worth starting. And then you have Dwight McGlothern there, who's there for depth. You obviously have a lot of cornerback talent. Even with the rest in peace, the loss of Kyrie Jackson, you still have like impact players and you're still able to make them work. So love that for you guys. At 15 for the Seattle Seahawks, offensive line, super duper key. Could go quarterback here if you are sitting at 15th. This is based on the current Super Bowl odds, if I didn't mention that already. But right tackle's a massive hole, and you got to fill it. Pause, but you also got to fill it. Emory Jones at LSU. Anthony Bradford, I think, will end up working out. So, you know what, go back to LSU and get yourself a dog in Emory Jones. At 16 for the Miami Dolphins. It's interesting to see them here at 16. But, you know, unfortunately, Tua is having his stuff. I just don't really think any of the quarterbacks are worth it at this point except Drew Allar. And Drew Allar is not the style of quarterback I could see for the Miami Dolphins. It's not. I can see, especially with Tyreek Hill, with his contract coming due in the relatively near future. And he even said he wanted to, once he's done with his football contract, he wants to go and do some adult content. Let's put it that way. I could see Luther Burden being an interesting addition here. This team is not shied away from adding more and more and more firepower. Colston Loveland's a dark horse addition here as well. But I'm actually going to go Luther Burden. I haven't done it before. Feel free to give some feedback there. I think offensive line is the best return on investment, but it's just not the organization that values it enough. At pick 17 for the Steelers, hopefully we could end up continuing to stack some wins, let Justin Fields end up being our quarterback of the future. But if we are at 17, we didn't make the playoffs. If we didn't make the playoffs, it's going to be very tough to say that we're not going to go after a quarterback. And I know people aren't going to like it, but I have a quarterback that fits Pittsburgh to a T. He's tough to bring down. He has a crazy strong arm, and he has a really good work ethic as well. That's Drew Allar out of Penn State. This is someone who I had as quarterback 17 preseason, and he's risen up to be QB3 for me. That's how much he's improved. Now, I'm not saying he's there yet, but I am saying that if you want to bring Justin on for one more year, say, hey, Justin, you didn't make the playoffs, but we still want you to lead our team. We have a developmental quarterback, and we want you to give yourself the best shot. So maybe at the trade deadline, we could send you to a team that maybe a quarterback goes down. Maybe if the Dolphins are saying, hey, God forbid Tua has another injury, like we need someone to step in, that's where, hey, Drew's ready to go. We can end up trading him and then going from there. But if you aren't making the playoffs, again, you have to keep this context. It's not the Justin Fields we're seeing right now. It's if we don't make the playoffs. That's what pick 17 is. You have to at least look at a longer-term option. We are not going to have Russ and Justin on contract. This is, like, the fact that I'm mentioning Justin Fields makes no sense because he's going to be off contract. But I'm, like, legitimately bringing him as potentially coming back as a factor. And I'm still saying we should go Drew Allar. There's videos of him working on his throwing mechanics since like literally middle school where it was atrocious. I always bring up the Josh Allen example and the perfect like opposite of, when we started using the Josh Allen example was with Trey Lance. And I personally didn't see it with Trey Lance, but even with that, after losses when he was at the strip club and all that, I personally took not offense because that's that's just a word that people make up, but like, I just genuinely didn't like it. I thought that that's not what a genuine quarterback who loses should act. And he's straightened up. He's obviously, not had the best career arc. So Trey, I'm perfectly happy developing him now. But when he came into the league, people said, oh, this is going to be the Josh Allen arc. Josh Allen sucked when he came to the NFL. And then he worked on his mechanics and ended up being really, really damn good. I'm already seeing Drew Allar working on his mechanics consistently And once he's there, once it clicks, I don't know if there's much going to be stopping him. But you need a team that has that patience, that has that defense, and I think the Steelers are that. At 18 for the Chargers, Kenneth Grant's like eye candy for the Chargers, but you can't pass on Colson Loveland. I think there's a big drop off after him. Debated taking him at 16, but this team does need a weapon. It does, and Quentin Johnston's doing better. Hallelujah! But Colson Loveland is it's just a love affair. It's perfect match. At 19 for the Buccaneers, you're in a perfect spot because Nick Scourton fell, Mikael Williams is kind of falling, James Pierce is here as well. All these guys are fantastic. Now, the player that I think would match the Bucs intrigue the most would be Mikael Williams. Someone who has some good size to him, but is very raw, has some freaky ability. Like Joe Tryon was kind of more that physical freak coming to the NFL. Yaya Diaby was actually a pretty athletic freak as well. So Mikael Williams just fits the profile of what you'd be drafting a little bit more. I like James Pierce more. I like Scourton more. But I think that when you're looking at the best fit, since Tryon's up for a contract, I think that replacing him with somebody who has a similar floor but a much higher ceiling is the smart thing to do. At pick 20 for the Atlanta Falcons, Nick Scourton's here. Very hard to pass on him at this point, but you do have someone like Ashton Genty here who deserves a lot of respect. Could have taken him there for the Bucs as well. It's that good of a player. But the Falcons are in a position where you could end up drafting a top tier edge rusher, and I do think that there still is a need for one. And for that, Nick Scourton is perfect. You can also kick him to the inside. I love the fact that he brings that versatility. It's Zach Harrison, but actually NFL applicable. So I'm going to be drafting Nick Scourton here at 20. At 21 for the New Orleans Saints, I want to trade back here so badly. Ashton Genty's here, and it's a kick in the balls to let Ashton Genty continue to slip. And I think there are plenty of teams that at least should be very intrigued with the idea of bringing on a super stud at running back. Again, devalued position is what it is. Based on Clint Kubiak's system, which he's doing a fantastic job, quarterback is no longer an issue. I think Spencer Rattler could do well for all I care. Receiver, you guys are having one of the highest EPAs, I think, in the NFL. You guys are doing fantastic. So there's not many positions I think you need to address. And so I think it's perfect to trade back. I really do. I just don't see a position that I think is valuable enough at this point. And with Ashton Genty here, he needs to be the next pick. And I really, really like him going to Cincinnati. And the Cowboys certainly are going to be a team in contention here. But I want to send him to the AFC. If I'm the Saints, I'm going to be like, I don't want to see this guy all the time. And the Bengals, this is a great way of taking some stress off of Joe. So for this, I think a the fourth round pick is going to be perfectly commensurate. But if you want to haggle, feel free to do that in your own time. But the Bengals are going to be making that move up there and selecting Ashton Genty, running back out of Boise State. At 22 for the Green Bay Packers. Again, a team that I think is very, very well balanced, not really in need of very much. But you could see them try to target a wide receiver one here. With Christian Watson, you could try to replace him with someone who I think actually plays a very similar role for Stanford in Alec Iomaner. I definitely would be interesting to see the Packers go after a receiver in round one. They're usually a defense first team. And I'm actually going to respect the defensive first mentality. And I've been drafting him a lot to this team, but I do think that Siobhan Revell just fits what the Packers are looking for. Physical, big, athletic, and underrated. So we're going to be going Siobhan Revell here. Got to give him as much love as possible. At pick 23 for the New York Jets. It's a team that could go quarterback. You could. But at the same time, James Pierce just fits like hand in glove. You're talking about Hassan Reddick that you traded for, showing that you have a need for a player who is in that 240-pound range, who can actually play some coverage as well and is extremely elusive. That's James Pierce to a T. Hassan Reddick's just being an asshole, and that's okay. He's losing money for it. James Pierce is going to be giving you all of that benefit at a much lower cost in terms of at least in the locker room. At pick number 24, though, Saints are back. You guys are doing a fantastic job, honestly doing far better than I ever thought. And I think everybody on planet Earth, I can't just single myself out, did not expect New Orleans to be this good. I just didn't see that being part of their game to that degree. I do like the idea of bringing on a young defensive interior here, pairing him up with Brian Brzee. Brian he's like a pass rushing specialist. He's really, really solid overall. Tyreek Williams is almost like the lightning to the thunder, or the thunder to the lightning for that matter. And I like that idea. You're going to be able to disarm some other competitors down the line from being able to draft Tyreek. And Tyreek is my interior defensive lineman too, over these other players who are a little bit more developmental. I think Tyreek pairs with Brian Brzee a little bit better as well. So you're getting a nice 1-2 punch there. At pick 25 for the Dallas Cowboys, it's a bit of a defeating loss. I guess that's the exact same term, but it is a bit defeating to have lost in that manner. But don't worry too much. Receiver, running back. That's how we're gonna save our team here. And Quinshon Judkins is kind of the answer to that. I think that you could get really solid value at running back maybe in round 2, but not quite the value and the return on investment that Quinshon Judkins would give you. Now, I think that there's a future for Deuce Vaughn on this team. Y'all know Deuce Vaughn is my guy. I'm going to be pounding the table every single time. I've seen him in person multiple times now, and he just wows me every time. Call me stupid, call me a fan. It is what it is. I'm just being honest with my eyes, with my heart, and with you guys. And I think that the perfect pairing for a running back like Deuce Vaughn, but you can get plenty of scat backs out there. There's not many backs that I truly trust that have both the balance, the power, and the vision. And that's what Quinshon Judkins brings to the table. This guy's fantastic. It's not just like a first-round running back, man. He really is awesome, and he's going to bring a lot to the table. He was amazing as a true freshman. Had a little bit of a stumble last year, but ends up coming out this year and is looking fantastic. At 26 for the Baltimore Ravens, offensive line. I'm going to be looking at Tyler Booker pretty heavily here to be that potential left tackle of the future. And I think that's a smart move. Have him be your left guard for the short term. You could even kick him to right guard based on Failele's ass performance, and then end up putting him to left tackle in the long run. That's probably the smartest move. Let Ronnie Stanley kind of coach him up, and because he's a super high floor guy, and I can see a lot of these teams down here that you're going to be competing against also wanting to get a piece of that. For the Eagles at 27, I've been pounding the table for this move every single draft, and I'm going to continue doing it. I do not care. I'm going Harold Perkins Jr. here, and here's why. So you want your Andrew Van Ginkel, right? That's what Fangio is looking for. You're looking at someone who can pass rush, who can cover, and who is unbelievably athletic, super high motor. That's Harold Perkins. He's playing a position he shouldn't even be playing, and he's still doing a damn good job at it. So I love that about him. He is a hand and glove fit. Hopefully he gets up to 230, if not 235, but I haven't really seen size become the massive issue that people want to say it is. But at the same time, physics exists. Not many players can truly play at that size. At pick number 28 for the Detroit Lions, this is going to also be offensive line. It is. I'm going to be looking at Donovan Jackson here. You could also look at Jaden Roberts as the most developmental guy, but I really got to go Donovan Jackson at this point. Left guard is super key. I want to also check out the edge rushers just to make sure I'm not missing out on anybody too crazy, and I don't believe I am. I really don't. I like Abdul Carter. Not going to move the needle enough for me. Princely is someone who I've gone many times, but I think that the Detroit Lions' strength is in their offensive line. And if I can end up drafting a top 8 player on my board at pick number 28, I'm going to do it in a heartbeat. Now, I will just say this. If you wanted to not go after Donovan Jackson or trade back, you could be in good hands by going Tate Ratledge. You could be in very good hands by going Arianti Urzuri. But Donovan Jackson, I think, is going to be the perfect fit for you guys. He's a fantastic player, doesn't get enough respect. At pick 29 for the Houston Texans, linebackers certainly could be something that you try to target and get some extra rotation in there. Jack Kaiser's perfect for that. But I don't really see that being the pressing issue that it is. And I really do trust, there's not many coaches I trust to properly develop defensive talent. At this point, your defense is fucking fantastic as that is. But when you talk about getting Kenneth Grant in here, who's extremely high motor, great athlete, he's going to be a great locker room addition, even though I think he needs a lot of work, hasn't really produced at the rate that he should. This is, with DeMeco Ryans, I feel comfortable letting him be a first-round pick. Not with many other coaches, but with DeMeco. At pick 30 for the Buffalo Bills, might trade out of the first again, because the receiving talent is really, really solid here. And I see a team that wants to go offensive line and honestly needs to go offensive line. So we're going to, I think, do very similarly to what happened in this past draft. We're going to trade back to pick 33 with Carolina's pick. And I'm forgetting the exact trade value here, but I'm actually going to send a 2026 pick in with this one as well. I think I ended up doing that with the Bears when they ended up moving up, but feel free to finagle all you want. Like maybe I could send like 148 here and then end up getting back 173. You guys can do your own math, man. Do your own stuff. Maybe send another pick there. Who cares? No one cares. We're going to do that. The Bears have officially moved up. They need offensive line desperately. And Arianti Urzuri is perfect here. He really is, because you can play left guard or left tackle depending on like how ass he's going to be as left tackle, which I don't think he will be. But you can give yourself your best shot there. You can go Marcus Bowe, but Marcus Bowe also might be a guard. But I want to highlight Jack Nelson here. I was going to potentially move up with the Broncos as well, but Jack Nelson's a true left tackle. 6'7", 312. Arianti, I think, will have to be a guard. So that's my one issue there. But 6'7", 312, and extremely polished. He's had a little bit of some issues this year, but I really love the fact that he continues to work on himself throughout the season and get better. He's gotten better every single year. So I can only see that improving. Jack Nelson also at Wisconsin can definitely handle the climate there. And they're going to have a lot of eyes on him. And a team like the Niners, like the Chiefs, who could certainly be looking at a player like Jack Nelson, and then especially the Broncos as well. This is a must. This is a must acquire for the Bears. So the Bears end up moving up, and they end up moving up twice, but they ended up getting 2 key positions with great value. Pick number 31 for the San Francisco 49ers. Right tackle is probably the position I'm still going to be honing in on. Blake Miller, Jonas Savania, as well as my number 5 player who will be dropping a little bit, but still a really good player, Marcus Bowe. Jonas Savania just kind of fits a little bit more of the personality of the Niners, but I literally ended up texting your guys's, why am I forgetting his freaking position? Scouting coordinator, scouting director for that matter, and ended up texting him verbatim, Arianti Urzuri is such a 49er. So I have to live up to that. He can play on the interior of the offensive line, but I actually do have trust in him that the Niners, similar to what I was talking about with Kenneth Grant and D'Amico Ryans, I have a faith that Shanahan can develop Arianti Urzuri into actually a really good right tackle who will eventually take over for Trent Williams when he's done. At pick 32 for the Chiefs, Arianti Urzuri was my favorite selection for him. I do think this is going to also be offensive line. You look at Jaden Roberts here, and he brings all the power that Trey Smith is going to be pretty much taking with him as he leaves. You're not going to be paying him 25, 26, 27 million a year. So I think Jaden Roberts is a great way to end off the first round. So that's going to be the video today. Let me know what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for rounds 2 and 3 tomorrow. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.